Hi everyone and welcome to Riskologists. This podcast is brought to you by Optimise and hosted by me, Pat Bradshaw.
And me, Nicola Boyle. Optimise are thrilled to host this podcast series where we'll be speaking with some of risk management's most respected and esteemed thought leaders from across the UK and beyond.
Throughout Season 3, we'll be exploring our guest journey within risk management, as well as exploring key conversations and topics around the overarching theme of the season being the future of risk management.
Our goal is to create a platform in which ideas and thoughts can be shared in order to inspire and educate our audience, and to ultimately give back to the risk management community across the world.
So without further ado, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Riskologists. I'm your host, Nicola Boyle.
And I'm Pat Bradshaw, and today we're absolutely delighted to be joined for the second time, Donna Festorazzi. Donna, thanks so much for coming on again.
No problem, guys. Nice to be here.
No worries. Got the gang back together, back by popular demand. I think I messaged you a couple of months ago saying, Donna, can you tell me what it is, what your secret is from a marketing perspective? Because your episode is head and shoulders our most popular, and I've had people come up to me and when I've been to like CRL awards and go, God, I've listened to that episode about 4 times, but sounds like you've not done a great deal other than just speak on the podcast and let it organically grow.
May have been a challenge to people, Pat, to see if they could understand me. You never know what's going on in the offices.
But no, honestly, absolutely buzzing to have you back on, Donna. It was an absolute no-brainer. So thanks so much for coming on again.
Yeah,
No problem.
If people haven't listened to Donna's first episode, this might, well, if you have listened to it, maybe a bit of a repeat, but we always start the podcast the same way, as a bit of a journey to date. So if you could just talk us through your background, your roots, your career so far. As we probably mentioned before, people will usually take maybe 30 seconds or could take up to 10 minutes to talk about their career, but just a journey to date.
So I'm quite long in the tooth for risk management. So I started in 2001 with I finished with an honours degree in risk management from Glasgow Caledonian. I then went on to work in insurance for a year and safety and moved into project risk in 2003. And basically I have been in kind of project or corporate risk for the last 21 years through the eyes of a consultant, a client and a contractor, basically in the UK, Australasia and now in the Middle East. So I think what we're going to talk about today, I think my varied career lends to this kind of topic because I have seen things from a very niche risk perspective across a lot of different kind of lenses. So really just a risk management true professional. So I know that Pat was a lawyer, etc. before this, but unfortunately, that was I am a boring risk manager from start. So I'm one of those unique unicorns that you never find. They go through the course and they stay. Yeah. So that's me really in a nutshell. And I'm now working for Red Sea Global in the Middle East.
Love that. Yeah, I was going to say, people who listened to the first one, I think you were in. You would have been in Glasgow at the time. You've recently, well, not recently, in the last 12 months, completely uprooted and gone over to the Middle East, which has obviously been amazing. Having spoken to you and stuff, how have you found that? Was there any teething problems? Was there any sort of settling in problems, or have you absolutely hit the ground running?
I think that the preconception is that I expected there to be issues, and I found that they weren't anything. So for me, it was just another risk job, going to an office just in a hotter climate, to be honest. Different types of techniques, different challenges in a stakeholder perspective, and like the innovation and the creativity here is just off the scale. So you have to adapt and be very agile, but the toolbox and the toolkit just required the same regardless of whether I was in the UK or whether I was in the Middle East.
Yeah. It's like they say, isn't it? Risk management is risk management, and you sort of, the process doesn't change regardless of what it is you're doing. Did you find any any sort of interesting nuances in things like culture in terms of an example I've used previously is one of the Optimised guys did some work in the Middle East in the early noughties when the colour red is associated with good things as opposed to red in the UK or at least in Europe being associated more with sort of scary things. They were talking about PIDs and things like that, and they couldn't quite get their head around, well, why is the big bad risk up in the top left corner in red and not that's not how it's sort of demonstrated as a good thing or an opportunity.
No, he must have educated them for me coming. I've not had any of that. I've not had any of that issues. I'm just trying to think what I've found. Commercially, they're a little bit different. They're not as commercial, or their health and safety is a little bit different than back home. But other than that, it's very similar, and the risk management is it's embedded, but not as religious, if you get what I mean. But I haven't found anything that I'm just trying to rack my brain to think if I've actually, someone said anything about colours or anything like that. I've not had anything.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, no,
I thought it was
I've not
quite
experienced
interesting.
anything.
Yeah, it's an interesting example. How's the sort of maturity of risk management and on projects out there versus things that you've tackled in the UK?
I think in the UK, we say that the maturity is varied, right? But it's not really in comparison to when you actually place it against other places in the world. I think that the maturity here is very, very, very varied. There is huge amounts of projects being built that I can see all round about me that we in the UK would not. We would have risk management teams, and we would be doing a lot more in terms of governance and ensuring and providing, I suppose, support to them. I think risk management here is very much it's a nice to have for a mature organisation. It's not like a minimum requirement, but it doesn't have to be like wholesale across your organisation. So for me, it's it is very much more varied, and the skill set's very much more varied.
Yeah.
There is I think it's in Red Sea Global, there's like 54 nationalities all working, building these hotels. So you think about what risk means to them. Like some of them believe risks are issues, some of them believe risks are just safety, and you're trying to cross barriers in communication and culture and their belief systems and their value systems and transparency. So I think that's where a lot of the challenges may come in risk management here. They're very, very I would say that the management and things that are here are very, very good. So their understanding of principles, their understanding of, like stats and all that, you don't really need to teach them anything like that. It's more about process, logical, stop, reflect type. That I think would be the difference between the UK before I came and money is there's a lot more money here.
Yeah.
Times are tough everywhere, right? But there's a lot more money being spent here. So
That's an interesting point. I was just going to say the diversity of thought must be through the roof, having so many different people from different backgrounds. In terms of the projects, again, I know they're very context specific, but with the sort of funds and things that the Middle East is quite renowned for, are they not necessarily as commercially sensitive versus sort of schedule sensitivity, or is that not really come into it?
I would say that all of the projects, not just even in Red Sea Global, like across all the projects that are here, they do schedule and they do commercial, and they undertake both. What I would say is that their strategies for commercial tend to be slightly different because we have a much more I think secure supply chain than maybe the Middle East. Remember, this place has just boomed. So there are people from all over the world. Like even our consultants, you see them popping up like the Maces and the WSPs, and you can see the boards going up and all that. Like they're all just trying to come in and then learn when you get here too. So that goes across the piece for supply chain, contractors, build, so for me, that's the commercial side is there, but it's a lot more agile, I think, than our like NEC4. I'm trying to rack my brains what that was again. NEC4 contracts, right? It's a little bit more lax in terms of being agile to what the country needs. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, hopefully people listening to this don't think that my line of questioning over the last 5 minutes has been too rudimentary. It is genuinely just because I'm so naive to how things go on outside of the UK from a risk perspective and morbid fascination. So yeah,
a great risk manager, Pat. Very curious by nature.
Exactly. Love that. Cool. So, as everyone will probably have noticed from the title of the episode, risk managers, the role then to now and tomorrow. Obviously, in keeping with the future of risk management, we discussed this prior to recording today. Obviously, doing a little bit of prep, and naturally, the future risk management we left quite ambiguous, and you had sort of all manner of things to look into. Why did you land on this one out of curiosity? I know some of the things we discussed is obviously you've got a huge amount of experience over the last couple of decades, and naturally things will have changed from then versus now, and then what you see in the future. Was there any sort of catalyst that sort of landed on this topic when we sort of presented it to you?
Yeah, so for me, as I spoke about, I've been really lucky and I've had a lot of time to grow into being the risk manager I am. Yeah, so I have had the chance to be the analyst, and then I've worked my way up to being a leader and being in exec teams and senior leader teams, and then obviously onto committees with boards. And in that, what I have seen and what I have learned is a lot of different skill sets at each of the levels as you go through the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And for me at the moment, we're in 2025, it's a digital age. Everyone's talking about AI. Everyone's focused on, like, the future's a mystery. What will it look like? I get it. It's exciting. We don't know what it is. But there's a lot of things to be had by looking back. Yeah, and actually reflecting back and looking at what have we done as risk managers, not what has the data said, but what have we done well? What kind of things have helped us grow? Because when I started in project risk, there weren't very many people doing it. And that's only 24 years ago.
Yeah. So
to survive, we've got to have done something well, or we would not be here, because we're a service. Yeah. So for me, it rings true with me because people are very focused on solutions and systems and what it can bring. And there are not many people, apart from very senior leaders in businesses, talking about what are the skills. Who do you want to work for you in your business? How do you get good teams? Yeah. And that is all, I believe, in my personal opinion, one of the real successes of risk management, embedding in organisations and creating this culture. So it's not the most academic or, like challenge the brain in terms of, it's like, I suppose I could draw the analogy of, you could be a secondary teacher teaching a really specific subject where you need a lot of skills and expertise. And you can be the primary teacher that's setting them up with all the kind of basic skills and knowledge they need to then be niche. And right now, I think our industry is becoming, it's a niche environment that's having these little pockets of specialisms within a niche market. So it really hits my passion level because as someone who has had and hired very many graduates and risk analysts and still leads teams and built teams from scratch, I think a balanced skill set is really important, and I just don't see much of it. If I go on LinkedIn, or if anyone's listening, while you're listening, click on LinkedIn, go to risk management, you're going to see very little on skills for soft skills for risk managers. And I think a lot of leaders should be talking more about the people as well as a particular skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that. I think selfishly, I was really pleased that you wanted to discuss this, because Nicola and I are sort of in a position in our career now where we're sort of taking that next step up into sort of the manager level, where naturally the technical skills are really important, but we're also going to be dealing with more senior people who are less agreeable, and you need to have more tenacity in order to sort of make your way into those conversations and actually hold your weight. So no, I'm yeah, really interested to hear what's discussed as well, because that like foundation piece you touched on a second ago as well. Really like that analogy. It's almost like a GP and a surgeon or something, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
you've got someone who can hold the conversation, and to me that's probably the most important piece, really. I think that's why people with convoluted backgrounds do so well coming into risk management, sales, marketing, recruitment, etc etc.
Because they're all, you know, like one of the things I always do when I do STEM classes with children, and I go into the classrooms and I ask them, and I, you know, like trying to teach a child what risk management is the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
It's
Yeah.
hard trying to teach
And
adults. My mum and dad still don't know what I
oh,
do.
wait till you get 25-year-olds all looking at you, right? So, and one of the things that I came up with, and it seems to work well in the few occasions I've done it, is I always put up an optical illusion. And I say to them, you know, like, who can put your hands up? What can you see? And then they'll tell you, I maybe put one up with 3 types of pictures in it. And the idea was to show them that it's about collaborating with others to be able to see the whole picture, and not just seeing the first thing and taking that for granted. And I think that this is, you know, like when we lose focus on a person has soft skills and technical skills. And if we build really, really technical people, and don't get me wrong, right? My daughter today said to me, I told her to look up her dictionary to spell a spelling word. And she said, Mum, how old are you? And I was like, well, Google it, you know, do something, you know. But for me, it's like you have to go back to what is it that we're trying to do, and what are we trying to teach people, and how do you teach them to have these soft skills and technical skills? Because if you can't, people don't make informed decisions always based on just the data. It's who gives them the data. It's how that data has been presented. Have you given them data before? Have they trusted you and it's worked out before? That's how CEOs get to where they get to. You know, it's they say what they're going to do and they do it. And for me, like when we're constantly training people in their technical skills, like both you and Nicola said, when a risk manager is put in a position, sometimes they have to liaise with people that are 4 levels above them in a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And how do they build credibility so that title isn't at play? And in different countries in the world, titles are really important. And you need to be able to work out how do you work to your strengths, and actually be really aware of what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, and be put in a safe place to grow as a risk manager. So for me, that's I suppose, you know, like I could talk about this all day, Pat, but that's really why I wanted to talk about it today, because I thought I've not seen many people doing it, and I think there's a time and there is space now, and for people to maybe just balance things out. I'm not saying don't embrace change. I'm not a dinosaur, like my daughter said. I'm just saying, like, when you use the data, it has to be used with like purpose and meaning, and it's used for a little bit, not everything, because construction, as we've seen, like if I look at AI have said, you know, like construction is the least amount of traction in AI.
Mm-hmm.
And just think about, why do you think that is? Because builders are very little on their computers, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of stakeholder are you facing off to? The second thing is that they trust people, because they have to be safe on the site. They have to be able to deliver because they're very accountable. So all of these things, I think, are reasons for focusing on both and having a balanced skill set, and for senior people to be really accountable for looking at how do you train the next generation of risk managers, because there will be a day, hopefully soon, that I might not have to keep working as much. And in that, I hope I'll have transferred some soft skills and some technical skills to others.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even seen it in like my short career when people have been really technical and delivering outputs or results. I think the project team can just sort of, it goes over their head or they don't really understand it, or so I think when you are such a technical person and you are leaning on those softer skills, I think it's just harder to be sort of integrated in the group or deliver the right message because people are just, they can't really relate to you, or I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think. Sorry, Donna, go ahead.
No, I think that picks up on Pat's point. No, it's like, how do you, I think it's quite convenient. I'm going to be really controversial here. I think it's really convenient for people to focus on technical skill sets, because when you focus on a technical skill set, you're able to kind of like stand back and go, this is what the computer said.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
you're
There's
not
your
accountable.
output.
Yeah. And the last thing people want round about them working with them is people that are not accountable. Yeah. So if you're an advisor, you have to be accountable for what you're telling them. You've assured what you're telling them. You have a correct sentiment about what you're recommending. But data allows you to be not accountable in some respects, but it also allows you to get away from challenging conversations, because you can kind of go, instead of talking through and having a crucial conversation with someone to say, listen, I know that this is your belief, and I know that this is why you're saying this. Can we talk about it more, because it doesn't seem right, because this is the information I have, or this is what's happened in the past, and I'm struggling to get past this. So can you explain it more? I may have picked it up incorrectly, but just as an assurance, can we talk about it a bit more? And some people don't like doing that and maybe confronting people. So they give them the data and say, well, it's what the data says. Like data doesn't lie. But then it's the garbage in, garbage out. Yeah. And if you don't have the buy-in from them, can you ever be accountable for it? So it's kind of like it's a never-ending cycle, like it really is a never-ending cycle. And it's one of those ones that I always say to my team, when you're part of a team in risk management, you will if you're working in a project and you're the risk analyst, manager, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever level, when you're asked to the party for a celebration of someone leaving, someone coming in, a Christmas party, I don't know, that's when you know you're making headway, because you're part, and you've got to be accountable, and data doesn't build trust.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
God, we've got some lovely sound bites so far. But no, that little piece you mentioned a second ago in terms of it's really easy to hire someone based on technical skills. Completely agree, because it's sort of an objective measure, isn't it? Have they done this? Yes. Have they done QRA? Yes. Can they operate this software? Yes. How do you then demonstrate this person acts with integrity? This person has the ability to work with diverse teams. This person is able to problem solve and think critically and strategically plan things. And I think that's where I was really fortunate that where we work optimized, we have like a competency matrix, and I'd say the technical stuff makes up maybe less than 50% of it. The rest of it's all those sort of real soft skills, which I was really sort of drilled on in my interview stages. And I completely agree. It's in keeping with the future of risk management, is that under threat a little bit in the hiring in the future. We'll touch on that in a bit. Might be jumping ahead a little bit in terms of what we look for when we hire someone. It's Groundhog Day. We need someone to churn out 10 QRAs every fortnight. They've done it. Okay, get them on board. We need a battery hen QRA. QRA. So
and you just what is it? You just keep getting all these people that are very the same, which is actually the absolute, like, to the core of what I've ever been taught is what a risk manager is. You know, like, we're not all the same. It's not all little Emmets and Lego Batman Lego movie. You know, we're very much diverse, and that's the skill set we bring.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like that is what I do see as, you know, like I was talking to someone the other day, and I hope I didn't offend them, but they looked a bit taken back by the conversation we had, because they said, you know, AI is going to destroy risk management. It's going to get us out of a job. And I said, you know, I don't think that's actually the problem. We're going to do ourselves out of a job. Because if we don't know what we're doing and we're not skilled to do the job right, we don't need anyone else to push us out. We'll just not be wanted, because we won't be able to provide value for anyone to actually make decisions based on, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So reflecting back then, looking back about 20 years, maybe when you first started out, what was the role of a project risk analyst, manager, risk professional, and how was it perceived in the organisation at the time?
So I started in the risk team in I'll say 20, that's how long it is, 2002. And I started Network Rail. I know, I always say 20 because I'm like, Donna, no. So 2002, I started Network Rail, and it was a really quite a new role. And Network Rail we ended up with like 40 risk managers. It was just unprecedented. We're one of the biggest risk teams ever, and I was really fortunate to be part of that first ever team. And what we were doing was we were embedded within the project controls area, but we were a matrix to a functional organisation. So what that allowed us to do is we very much knew our purpose was to support a project manager. And coming out of university the year before, I knew that was what people expected a risk manager to do. Two sides of a coin. It used to be in the APM stuff. I don't know if the Pram guides take that away yet, but it was like two sides of a coin: the project manager, the risk manager. And I knew that it was all about supporting and helping, and that's what my role was. And it really, you know, like it was whatever it took to support them. That's what the job was, yeah. And it was about having risk workshops, and we used to get like full day workshops. I'm not kidding. I used to have walls, like, you know how those, when you go on Google Images and you get the risk manager and you see the post-its and all, that genuinely was my day-to-day. Like, I'm not kidding. Even got to the point I was like getting pink ones and green ones for opportunities. And I mean, it was like a big thing. And I was doing workshops for risk identification. I started getting some value management training, so I was doing value management, but it was all about facilitation and challenging, and people, I think, you know, like, how was it perceived? It was there's always people that won't like it, right? That I'm never going to say the whole of Network Rail loved when I turned up with flip charts and post-its. They didn't, yeah. But what I will say is that behaviourally, whether they liked to have the time spent doing it, they always gave their time. It was never challenged. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was better when it was a gateway, because we embedded risk management through gateways in Network Rail as a governance. But the whole thing was about talking to people, me upskilling myself so I could have a conversation with a overhead line expert in Network Rail, going, what is an overhead line? Going out, seeing sites, understanding how you build a railway, so that then I could actually go, oh, guys, I also remember in one of the bridge meetings, they were doing a type of technique on building a railway bridge. I also remember going home to my father, and I was so happy because I asked him what I thought was a really, really stupid question, because I'm not an engineer. And I said, why would you? My dad was a tradie, so I had a little bit of practical, you know, like DNA in me. And I said, why would you do it that way? Why wouldn't you do it this way? That's a bit strange. And it was just because I probably didn't, I talked before I thought, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's a good idea. Why are we doing it that way? And I was like, did I actually make a meaningful conversation here? This is brilliant. And it was like, and then I realised, like, you don't have to be an engineer to help them. You just need to understand what they're trying to do, and then use your process and your logic and what you see is happening in all the others, because you're the only one that was collecting that. You were like, you were becoming like, you know, the fountain of knowledge of this business. Because lessons learned, they weren't shared as much then as they are now, but we could see the trends of what was coming and how it was doing. So it was perceived very well, but it was a lot more. You know, today we're stuck in Teams, and people, I think, now conveniently are. If you're in a meeting, if you're in a building with someone and you've got a meeting with them, and they choose to sit in Teams with you and not come to the room, I think that's a telltale sign.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more convenient. And risk managers, like, we used to have no email Fridays in the risk team. We were not allowed to email anyone on Friday. I used to do this in my team, because they would sit beside each other and they would actually email each other. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, he's there. Like, go and just ask him. And they were like, oh. But it became something through the generations that I seen that it was quicker just to, I've done that, instead of going and having the conversation. But what happened was context get missing, learning is getting missing. Just being able to understand what that person does and connect with that person's now becoming harder. And we were losing that kind of stakeholder ability, even within our teams. So in Network Rail, it was fun. We had lots of times facilitating. We'd do one full day workshops. I mean, can you actually believe it? Like, we didn't have to do a morning session and an afternoon session 2 days later because people were too busy. Like, we had the full day sessions. They would come in, we'd have lunch. So it was very much more a fun activity for them than I think what it's perceived now, because we got systems and things.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely seeing the benefit of all the things that you've mentioned. The reason I say that is because when I joined Optimize, it was right in the thick of COVID. So I think it was like 2 years maybe before I facilitated anything in person.
Okay.
When I first joined, and now that's pretty much, I always, unless sort of exceptional circumstances, I'll always try and do everything in person because it's just invaluable. Like, it's like you say, it's so easy to sort of send an email to someone or send a Teams message to somebody who's sat right next to you.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think in the early noughties as well, obviously it wasn't as bad, but we're sort of spoilt now a little bit in terms of you don't really need to have a conversation with someone. 3 people could be sat in the same room. And I was out for a meal with my girlfriend at the weekend, and there was a table of like 5 girls sat next to each other, and there's all of them on the phone. So I'm absolute
Off piece there.
yeah, just gone off piece there. But yeah, I think it's the same
But
thing.
that's the generation we're in. It's becoming acceptable not to, like, I remember, this might be going back a little bit, but one of the best leaders I've ever met was a great listener, but he was really impatient when it came to meeting times. Be there, do not be late, because it's disrespectful. And when you come to a meeting, if he had the time and he could take time out his diary and he was the boss, why couldn't you?
Yeah.
Did I think my time was more valuable to sit on a phone whilst he didn't do his work?
Yeah.
It's a really, really good way to look at it. Like, people are giving up their time to come and spend with you, like whether it's at the dinner with your, when you were observing that table, or I'm pretty sure if, you're sitting at the table with your girlfriend and you start going on your phone and she's like, hey, did we not come out to spend and chat?
Depends
and
if United are playing or not.
Yeah. But it's an important lesson. Like, when you're a risk manager and you take these people's time, you're taking them from something that is important to them, and they have to deliver.
Yeah.
So you should be respectful of that and make sure you prep for it. And that was something we were also told in Network Rail, which I don't think people do as much now. Like, they run from a Teams to a Teams. We used to spend like a day before, and it would be like, name tags on the tables, feedback forms, like it was like properly done, even in a client organization. But what it did do was it kind of set me up for understanding I was always a service. And if you don't give a good service, like in any walk of life, if you're buying something, and they are buying, like they are through their overhead of a TPMO or through their overhead of, they are purchasing your time.
Yeah.
And if you can't make that time feel special and valuable to them and give them something, you won't pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, love that, Donna. Thank you. So in terms of skill sets then that were really sought after from risk people
Yep.
back when you got into it, might be asking you probably had a sleep since then, casting your mind back. But obviously I know you might have been the anomaly in terms of doing risk management at uni. Can you remember what the other cohort of the other 40 people that were involved in your team were doing? Were they as convoluted as one would expect? Was there anything in particular that, at least from your experience when you were interviewed or when people were looking to get into risk management or falling into risk management, as people often do, they were looking at those softer skills? I think we can teach them. Luckily, Donna's got all of that really good technical background, so could have a bit of an accelerated start, but somebody else might not, but they're ticking all the right boxes from a soft skill perspective. Was that sort of the way that it was tackled then as well?
So I remember from the people that were like my seniors in the first jobs that I had, I was one of the first kind of years of graduate through the risk management qualification, right? So there weren't very many that had the qualification when I came out of university. So there was like statisticians, there was one that was an astrophysicist, there was one that has health and safety background, one that was like a value manager turned risk manager, because value management with Henry Ford in the 50s, they were already doing that. So they had came from, and not as many PMs, I must admit, into risk, but those kind of commercial ones, some of the planners that were really good at planning but understood the risks of developing a plan. So they had all came in, engineers that were quite more kind of balanced skill set on the engineering side. So we had all those types of skill sets. So it was a very balanced team. But in particular, my first mentor, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning him, Bill Kennedy. He employed me, and he employed another gentleman. There were two of us, and he was a mathematician, and honestly, he was very, very bright. And I remember on the first day, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, I did all right in maths, right? But I was like, I ain't got Strathclyde Masters in Maths, right? So this is going to be, this is a bad thing, right? And it worked out. Like, he was like, I need a good data analyst, and he needs someone to work with the teams. And from there, and I think this is where it's, I mean, your first mentors really leave quite a big stamp on you. And I think that kind of, because I was petrified for like the first month. I thought, I'm never going to be able to do this maths. Like, oh my goodness, what maths are we actually doing here? Like, and I think that left quite a legacy in me. Like, he was a great risk manager, and he went on actually to be like a project director and very, very senior, and went into more PM. Whereas I stayed in the risk section. But it was really quite interesting to see how the dynamics of a pure mathematician who was, part of football clubs and all that, he was very social, right? But he was a mathematician. Yeah. And then someone more like me that was more into the psychology and the people and building rapport and influencing and persuading people, how we really worked was unbelievable, to the point where they went and they were looking at promoting one of us, and they said it would actually unbalance the team, and they kept the two of us, because the dynamics between that two kind of skill sets really, really worked. And I think as I grew and as I led teams, I always made sure that we were trying to do that in a person, because I thought that would really help based on what I'd seen. But all different backgrounds, and they all brought different things, which I learned from.
Yeah.
I'm glad you shared that, because I still see people on LinkedIn who are now risk professionals who might have been data scientists, or like you say, statisticians or mathematicians or
Yeah.
physicists, and I see it and I'm like, Jesus. I'm like, they are infinitely brighter than I am. But I think it just comes back to the point you made at the start in knowing your strengths. I
Yeah.
think there's things that I'm really proud of that I know that I can do really well that they might not be able to do. They might be able to do, but might not be able to do. So yeah, it's that not necessarily imposter syndrome, but it's comparison. What's that saying about comparison? It's the thief of joy, or something like
Oh,
that.
thief and I, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other thing to think about, Pat, is, and even like Nicola as well, the thing to think about is that if 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 you only have a skill set of data, right? If you're just a data analyst, for example, and you're in a risk role, you will never get the job done, because the objective is to get them in a room or get them on a call and to get information from them that then enables them to do what they need. So
Yeah,
a risk manager can never work alone. It doesn't matter what they do. Even in the AI, they have to get people to give them, whether it's plans or commercial information or cost information, and they have to be able to sense check it. So we don't, we never work on our own. So then people might be a lot brighter in certain areas, but the core of it is, it doesn't matter who you are. If you can't get them in the room, you cannot test or assure anything you give out.
yeah,
And I think that's why, if they come from a data background, keeping them just a data person doesn't just affect them in their career, it affects the team around them, because then that team around them are associated with that person's, where the skill set is, oh, don't go to their workshop, they'll just talk to you about numbers and I don't like numbers, or like, so it's just about trying to help people become more rounded in a risk manager role. If you want
yeah,
to do data, stay in a data profession.
yeah,
Yeah.
If you want to be a risk manager, you need to be like the jack of all trades and the master of none. You've
yeah.
got to be able to have a bit of everything in order to actually succeed in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of like the training and development plans then that were on offer when you sort of first got into the profession versus now, how do they shape up? I feel like these days there's a huge focus on QRA, particularly from a consultancy perspective, because the quicker you can get somebody churning those out, the quicker you can get them on
Pretty
client
make
site, the
money.
more you can charge for them, sort of thing. Was
Yeah,
that the focus back then as well, or
no, no.
were the training
It was
plans a
just
lot different then and
workshops.
now?
Now, so the training plan when I first started was all about, could you stand up and could you facilitate with really grumpy men usually, right? Because the profession then was just all men, near like 90% men. Could you stand up from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and could you lead a team in a room and make sure there were no conflict in the room, create a safe space, get them working constantly, because if they weren't working, it was chaos. And could you take notes while facilitating? Like, I even learned how to write backwards and people, upside down, sorry. And people always, I do it naturally now, and people always go, oh, how did you learn to do that? Did you go on a course? And I went, no, because when I wrote to seniors and I would write them, because I'm highly visual and some of them were, and I would write upside down to communicate with them, because if I wrote it for me, I'd have to turn it around and they didn't have the temperament to wait. We learned loads of skills, like, but it was very much, we did have QSRAs, like, in Network Rail, we brought it in, I think it was 2005, and we learned it was 15 minutes. I think we were the first team to find it didn't go down to like 1 minute for track possessions. And we did learn those technical skills, but they were always a byproduct. They were never the core. The
Yeah.
core was risk workshops, mitigation actions, um, we put in ARM and developed some dashboards, and then it became about, like performance management with dashboards. Are we doing good? What's the lead indicators and stuff? But it was very much about like the way I used to look at it was like we were taught the skill set of stakeholder management, building rapport, presenting, facilitating. QSREs, QCREs, we did get taught them, but it wasn't practiced as often as the other skill sets. Yeah. And then we started learning other things like value management, because we started doing VM1 and 2 workshops, getting the SWOT analysis early into risk management. So it was very much more balanced. We learned PM in our training program. So I did the PMP in like 2007. I was pregnant with my daughter, so I always remember that one. I was 36 weeks or something pregnant, sitting a PMP exam. And value management. So we learned like really diverse skill sets. And it wasn't just about, if you were a QCRA was not the first thing they sent you to do. And in the teams I've had, it's never been the first thing I've sent them to do, because I don't know if they can facilitate the input correctly to then go in the model.
Yeah. How do you see that? Obviously, as we've already touched on at the moment, there's probably a little bit more of a focus on that QRA piece from an early point to get you reading between the lines, billable as early as possible, because a lot of the clients probably don't see the value as much now, maybe because it's not done as often or not done as well in some of the things that you've mentioned. How do you see that in the future? Do you see it balancing itself out? Do you see it getting worse? Do you think it's completely dependent on the people driving that? So, for example, if you're in the driver's seat, then it certainly wouldn't be that. Whereas if somebody else was who favoured that, then it definitely would be.
I think for the next like 5-6 years, it's going to be very dependent on people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think after that, if it was very much driven about cost and schedule data analysis, I think we will lose that skill set. And if you look at it, if we even just look at AI, just take an example of AI, and we go down the route of AI and we bring AI into the company, yeah? The AI is a starting point for a risk manager. It's not the end, and it doesn't give you what you need to do. So for me, if we keep teaching people these technical skills, the AI will supersede some of these technical things that we do. But the thing that it can never, like, I'm very good friends with a very high AI specialist, and the thing it can never do, well, at the moment, is have that human thought process and make informed decisions. And remember what it is we do. We tell people, like, we give them that chance to stop and just take a minute, because you're running to try and deliver something. You've got a deliverable, you've got someone coming for a board meeting, you've got things happening all the time. People's diaries are full. And the thing that we do give people is that opportunity to just take a minute, take time out, and actually think about, what are we doing here? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that comes with building trust, and that comes with building people that can build relationships with others and stakeholders. And if that is not, and I don't know anyone in a business that wouldn't pay for that, because like CEOs pay for coaches, board of audit boards and committee boards, they pay for people to come in and check someone's done their work right. That's all about trust, yeah. And these corporate risk managers, they're all there, as advisors. There's a huge market for advisors. It's just that I noticed when we implemented systems and Network Rail very early on, a lot of our capability was lost because we didn't build QCRA models from scratch in Monte Carlo. It was in the system. So the next person that came on, we didn't teach them how to do it because, well, the model did it.
Yeah.
And how do you read it? Oh, well, the model just tells you, but did you take that back to the data? Because it shouldn't be skewed because your inputs and your minimums when it's skewed. Like, they're just things that the computer now does for us that we've lost a little bit, but that enabled us to give good advice.
Yeah.
And so I think the future will depend on how many people come into this industry of risk management that are analytical, because they will drive, one, the selling of services, the training plans of people. And if they come with this, what is it they say, like, tomorrow's a mystery, that Kung Fu Panda thing my daughter's always on. I get the why, the shiny lights and all that, but we need to keep it in perspective.
Yeah,
So
I think from a QRA, just to be clear as well for anyone listening, we're not poo-pooing on people doing QRA from an early stage. I think we're poo-pooing on people who get taught what buttons to press, and that's where it's a bit of handle cranking. I think it's sort of chicken and egg, isn't it? In order to be able to do the risk modeling effectively, all of the stuff that we're talking about now has to come first in order to be able to develop the inputs. Running the model is the easiest bit. The analysis doesn't start until you've pressed that button and then you get an output. And like you say, having the wherewithal to be able to compare and contrast what you've put into it, being content that you've robustly challenged those inputs and you've reached that consensus through sort of prodding and poking and interrogation, and then you can compare and contrast. It's not a case of I've pressed the button, what does it mean? What does it say? I don't know. It's just that's what the model says.
But conversely as well, it's like you're looking at it from the point of view of how many, like what will the future of risk management look like because of this? For me, it's like how many good people will we lose or not even enter our field because of this?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the risk managers in my day, they're not always data analytical people. We taught how to do it, but we've got a lot more skill sets in terms of soft skills, and it's like who will not become a risk manager because they think it's all on a computer now, which will be a really shame for the profession.
I wonder if, just thinking out loud, if that's because you were in a generation that wasn't all around phones and online and
You had to talk to
all that
people,
sort of
Pat, not
stuff.
Snapchat them and
Yeah,
that.
exactly. I was being very careful what I said then in terms of
Twitter
what age bracket I was putting you in there.
He's getting as bad as my daughter, the dinosaurus that's coming out, But yeah, and as well as that, like our mentors would always say is like, don't send them an email, go and talk to them. And we used to go to the photocopier, like obviously sustainability now, we don't print much, if anything, We used to go to the photocopier and we'd talk to people who were there photocopying a report, and we miss all these kind of, we're missing all these opportunities, which we would have done naturally. And now it's like, because that's not getting done, we really need to focus on making sure people have those skills. And I think, like, for a person, if you could, like, if you just imagine, like, how good it would feel to go, I can do a QRA with my eyes closed, but I can also get the people to come to my meetings and I get the reward and I know that they're engaged. The reward for that person is huge. And they also are able to bring that skill across their life. It's not just like in the office environment. The relationships at home get better. They bring that to the office. Like there's a lot of things that just teaching people emotional intelligence, teaching people how to build, be reflective, teaching them persuasive skills, all influencing, all this stuff will help across the whole board.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So just reflecting back again, so what defined success for a risk manager in the early days, for your role, and how did career growth opportunities look?
So for me, success was really simple. The key people came in my meeting.
Yeah.
That was a tick. That was always like, boss would always go, was project director there? And you had, like, I couldn't turn around and go, oh no, he's really grumpy. Didn't like to come, you know what he's like. why have you not got him in that room? Like that was it. So that was, honestly, that was the first point of success. The second was that we come out with opportunities as well as threats. So that was one of the things that was always like, don't just give me problems, give me solutions, focus on these solutions. Third, was like we were able to have a risk register that was for every live project. And we used to be able to monitor them and get them every month updated. And then QCRAs were run quarterly, and then QSRAs were run at milestones. So it was a really light approach, but it was a really it was simplistic but really effective. Yeah, so we didn't try and run QCRAs every month, because when we run a QCRA, I used to have to go through every single line item in an estimate. Like, I don't think people do that now, right? Sit with the estimator, go through well, see that? Did you get a quote for that? Or was that is that just a number? Have you got a quote for that one? Did the bill of quantities come in for that? Do you know that's a certain number? And like, we used to go through, it was in such granular detail, but we did less. But what we did do, we did well. Whereas now I think with the TPMO perspective of assuring, this has even become more important for a risk manager to have less skills, like more soft skills, because you're assuring their data. So the success when I'm in a TPMO is, how well can I teach people to be as good a risk manager as my risk team?
Yeah.
And teaching is all about soft skills. Yeah, you have the technical ability, but if you can't teach someone, then I can't be an effective TPMO. So it depends on like where I'm at and what I'm doing to what the skills. But to be in the beginning, it was like, can you get them there? Can we get the risks? Have we found something that someone else hasn't? It was really as simple as that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then just looking at the risk manager over the years, then what do you think are the biggest challenges that risk professionals face today?
I think that the biggest challenge they face is that the world around us has become fast-paced, more efficient. Like, I always talk about Domino's pizzas. You put the domino in, and you can it's going in the oven. This blows my mind, right? And then it's getting warm, and the wee guy's getting happy, and then you know when to leave your house to go and collect it, right? And I'm just like, they can tell me how they're building a pizza and when I have to go and deliver it, right? Surely after, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of years, we were able to tell how long a project would be, right? But there's more complexities, and I get it. But it's like, sorry, I forgot the question. I'm too busy thinking about Domino's. Can you repeat that? Sorry, audience. I'm hungry.
What are the biggest challenges that risk professionals face today?
So for me, it's the sense of urgency, the highest creativity, and innovation. Like, we're becoming so creative that learning risks is the trend is not as stable. I don't think, if I had to do analysis of the whole and I got all the data, I would think our risks are starting to evolve, because things are just not like they used to be. We used to build a bridge like this. We used to do things modular, and everything now is like high-end, bespoke. And so I think the challenge they have is that the risk manager has to learn quicker than all of those round about them. Because if you think about, when we talk about a risk manager, they need to know a bit about commercial, need to know a bit about estimating, need to know a bit about everything, right? Yeah. And then you put them in like this hyper-focused area of activity with every area really up in their game. And then we've got to come in and provide them advice, and they're still learning their skill in this new environment. So it becomes really challenging for credibility.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest challenge we're going to have. And the other thing is that we've become, I mean, this is a very generalist, everything I'm talking about is quite general, right? But we've kind of become this discipline where I hear it all the time. I actually correct my team all the time on it, because they go, oh, we're a risk manager and we're not accountable for the risks. They're accountable for the hiatus facility, and then I get it together, and then it's them. They have to drive it, they have to manage it. Now, I get it. And I'm not 100% saying it's not true. However, first of all, that attitude of saying that out loud isolates you from the team.
Yeah.
People are like, what you say is very little taken in with people. How you behave is, like 70% or something they will take from that. People can see when you're not accountable. And I think that this attitude of I'm not accountable, well, then you're just an admin. I could get anyone to type it in, really.
Yeah.
Like, so what are you bringing? So I always say to my team, you might not be the risk owner, but you are responsible if you can unhook something, unblock something, find someone else to help them. That is your job. You are accountable. You can't just go, I just type it in, because you get paid a lot of money to type.
No, I completely agree. I do hear that quite a lot as well. And you say, "Oh, my job title is a risk manager, but I'm not the person actually managing the risks." And I like you say, I understand that thought process, but it is semantics. At the end of the day, it's almost like similar in football when the manager's not the person on the pitch putting tackles in and putting the ball in the net, but inevitably he's always going to be the one whose head's on the chopping block. Maybe the risk manager's head may not be the one on the chopping block, but I definitely think that the accountability is really important, and not just accountability to say, oh, according to the Power BI dashboard, all my actions are in green, none of them are overdue. Like I say, that's just administrative. Approach it in a way in which I'm a part of this project. I want it to be a success. Granted, I'm not the person who's going to go away do the hard yards to manage it, but I'm the person who's really going to understand, okay, if that's not been done, not just well, you've not done it, that's your problem. It's okay, why haven't you done it? Is there anything I can do to support you in making that easier for you? And yeah, I completely agree. I understand the thought process, but it is
You've got to be on the
a bit of a
pitch.
cop-out.
You've got to be on the pitch, and you've got to be playing. Yeah. And how you contribute depends on your position. Yeah. And in some ways, there will be some people that will, like the striker's going to be up front, and some people are going to be behind. Maybe you're like the linesman and you're waving out the warnings for them, but you're on the pitch and you're playing. And when you're in the stand and go, no, I don't care if you win or not, but hey, by the way, you do know that other team's a better team.
Yeah.
You're not really getting anywhere, and this is some of the behaviours we're starting to see, and I think teaching people more soft skills will realise this on their own. You don't have to teach someone, they will realise it, because the skills they get and the training they get, they'll start to uncover this. Whereas if you're just churning data and focusing on systems, you never look up. So you wouldn't be aware until it's too late.
I find it really interesting as well, because I think it's definitely slept on these days, actually getting the risk person out on site to see what the hell it is they're building. I think there's times I've been fortunate to be involved in projects in the Northwest where I've been able to see the tangible result, and so easy to just get your head caught in Excel sheets and QRA models and lose sight of the fact that we're actually building something and something's actually being knocked up. And I think the first couple of times I actually saw things that are tangible being built, I'm like, but God Almighty, I've actually contributed, albeit not the person putting the bricks and mortar on the floor and building the foundations, but I've gone some way into contributing that. And I think that for me was a real, like, I don't want to say epiphany moment, but it was a real turning point for me in my career, because it gives you something tangible to think, actually, I might not be the one who's accountable for this, but I can go a ways into go a ways into contributing to its success.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about Red Sea Global. I get to go and see the hotels getting built, but there's another thing about when you go out to site. People on site see you, and then they go, "Oh, there's people at site. Well, they must be coming to have a look," and then that makes them feel like you're part of the team. The second thing is, when you're at site, you start to feel how under pressure these people are. Because when you're in an office, you don't pick that up. Yeah. And emotional intelligence, empathy, going, oh, they didn't come to the meeting today, but I understand because I've seen them, they were all running about because of this. I'm not going to go, well, your KPI is now red. You might be a bit more tolerant to go, listen, guys, I know that there was an incident or whatever. We'll move that. I've seen you all. And there becomes this kind of mutual respect and trust and just a bit of empathy for people. So visiting site really has two benefits. That you felt rewarded, so you feel like, oh yeah, I'm doing something really cool here, and as well as that, they see someone who wants to participate and help them in achieving their goal. And if you go back to what I said when I first started this conversation, was that I was taught at university a risk manager was the supporting function of a project manager, because a project manager had so much to do, they needed this kind of person to help them. I'm going to site and doing that. That's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question was going to be coined around, what do you think success of a modern risk manager looks like today and in the future? Reflecting back on the points that you mentioned were a success for you when you first started out, I think objectively they should still be considered a success today. Did the right people come to the meeting? Did we discuss both threats and opportunities, albeit maybe not on the same day, but at least we were cognizant of that, and we've put time in to discuss that at a different time. I guess my question is then, reflecting on that, do you think that is still what success looks like now, or do you think that it's a little bit more convoluted and success might be, oh, well done, you've turned around a QRA in quick time, quick fashion for somebody to pass assurance, maybe a possession QRA or something like that?
So for me, it doesn't. This is where it doesn't come down to technical or soft skills. So for me, in this, it's like success, kind of for a modern manager would be more high level. So things like, are people coming asking for help and guidance, or are you having to keep looking for it? Because that really is, am I valuable to someone? Because if you're having it, I mean, it's different if you're a consultant and you're trying to get work, right? That's different. But if you're in an organisation, or you've got an organisation you repeatedly work for, and you hear that they've got a big, massive, complicated project and they're all under the pump, and you're not getting a phone call, well, I don't know if that would say, would I think I did a good job in their eyes last time? Yeah, or did they get, I might have done a good job, but was this the value they got for the amount they spent? Or I don't know. But for me, it's like repeat business tells you that that's success for a modern risk manager, because people don't want to stop and reflect, and has its disadvantages. And some people will recognise they need to do it, and some people need a little bit more help in doing that. But asking for guidance and coming, I had a guy the other week that phoned me and asked me if I could read his email. He was sending an important email to someone. He wanted me to check it, just to check it was okay. Well, yeah, okay. Share your screen. Let me have a look. And I was like, it was around, it wasn't about a risk, but it was kind of mitigating a risk, but it was very unique, right? And I thought, he must value my opinion. That to me is what a successful risk manager. I mean, I've not had it done very many times, but like in this occasion, I was taking it.
Well, you've been asked to come on a podcast twice, Donna, so I'd say that's pretty successful.
Yeah. So things like that are, honestly, that's what I think a risk manager success should be. Do people want you?
Yeah.
Like, are you seen as really wanting to help people? Because if you have that sentiment and you're taught the skills, then you just won't even worry about that question, because you'll be just too busy helping people. And I think, like, be accountable. The successful risk manager moving forward will have to be more agile. They're going to have to learn more trades. They're going to have to be a lot more agile, because the advice they're going to give is going to have to be more simplistic in a more complex environment. And that's going to be tough. And how do you even get there like that? That's going to be tough for anyone. So it's so that would be maybe one. the fact for me, like if I was like a risk manager in an organisation, I might think success would be, you know, I remember being nervous when I was younger when I was doing like QCRAs mostly, and someone would say to me, "Are you sure that contingency's right? Because we're bidding for a job, and that job's profit is this amount, and your risk register's the same. Are you confident in that number? Because that number's more. We're spending 5 years and making no money, right?" So for me, like having people in my meeting, being able to understand what they're talking about and actually be able to confidently say to someone, yes, because I understand what it is and they know that you are credible enough to do that. I think that's really, how could you ask for more? It's very simple, and it's not like, it's not as tangible as what I think people would like, but our profession's not as tangible. And I think when we make it just about these technical skills, this is where we're getting a bit confused about sometimes risk management can be very successful, just not on numbers.
Yeah, completely agree. And I just wanted to reflect back on one of the things you mentioned a second ago in terms of somebody asking you to proofread their email. I think just reflecting on that, there's absolutely no coincidence that you're being asked to do things like this. Granted, we're pretty small, pretty small fish, but you're being asked to do talks in Dubai. It's no coincidence that your first podcast episode was absolutely flying. Every time I see you post on LinkedIn, the engagement's through the roof of people saying, "Well done, congratulations," hundreds of likes and comments. And I think that in itself is just a byproduct of somebody who's clearly very well respected and also just reading between the lines, a very nice person. And I think that's really is a perfect objective measure to show how what you've done and what you're preaching today can be really successful and should be really successful.
Yeah, and I'm not like, there are going to be people out there that are absolutely like lay the floor with me when it comes to QCRA, right? And there'll be people that will be absolutely spectacular when it comes to QSREs, like Doug Oldfield or something, you know, like, and all the people that specialise in them. And there's room for everyone. And I think that's the thing, like, risk management's really, really, we're really fortunate because every day is different, and that's what we wanted as a profession. That's why most people get into it. And we're kind of taking that away from ourselves by making it something it doesn't have to be. And there's a market for everything, and it's like, know what your skills are, work on the ones you need to, but you don't have to be a master in the ones you don't like, because there's always room for everyone else. And one of the key things that I've always said, and I think it is borne a lot of fruit, and I've been able to see it through the years, is like when my teams write emails to project teams and make them reread it. They're not allowed to send it without rereading it, and they have to reread it as the person receiving it. Like, what would you think if you received that and you're them? When we develop systems and software and risk tools, I remember saying to the team I was working with, I said, "Oh, that's really good. Are you filling it in?" "Oh no, we're a TPMO. They're filling it in." I'm like, "The PMs are filling it in." "Yeah." "So why would the PM be interested in all these things?" "Oh, they wouldn't." "So you've built a tool for you that you'll never fill in. How do you think that's going to land?" And I think it's like and these are soft skills. These are teaching people how to understand others, like Nick Fewing's The Team Lead Succeed, and all these types of things. It's building on you, and then you can be successful in any area of risk management.
Yeah, love that.
Great. So in today's environment, how do risk managers become more valuable members of the team, and then also position themselves as strategic leaders?
So I think we need to be more vulnerable. We need to be able to understand we're not going to know all the answers. That's not what we're here to do. Yeah. But we need to be a bit more vulnerable, and for some reason we need to. I feel like everyone in today's environment thinks we need to be the expert, and actually sometimes not being the expert's the advantage. Yeah. And just sitting in that and being comfortable in that, And that comes with growing your own confidence, being aware of yourself, and being aware of how you affect others. I think is really important, because your job is to work with stakeholders, whether it's from the context all the way through your risk management framework, yeah? And every point you've got a stakeholder. And if you don't understand you could be the issue. And in many points in my career, I'm pretty sure I've been an issue, yeah? But I've learned, or I've been given a mentor, and I think that's something as well. Like, in this day and environment, I started putting people in my team with others that either mentors that help them with their things they weren't as good at, maybe listening, or, you know, the best person I knew about listening. That person could have been in the environment team, they could have been in accounts. I didn't care, because it was a skill they needed to learn. And I think, like, don't always think your mentor has to be in risk. So in this environment, collect as much as you can, look very wide. Look for mentors that will help you in skills in your toolbox, and not just in your technical profession, because that will come. It's the other things that you're trying to look for, because that's where you'll find your success. How you can diversify and be agile and have all the tools in the toolbox, I think, will be actually the value of a risk manager moving forward.
Yeah. Love that. So the next couple of points are around sort of soft skills and technology and stuff, but I feel like we've sort of covered quite a lot of bases on those two things. So I guess just wrapping up then, it will probably feel like, from people listening to this, that the future of risk management, we spent a lot of time reminiscing and going over times been and gone and present, and sort of reflecting on the future a little bit. I think from my perspective, it's been a really nice, refreshing reminder of things that that might have been forgotten just because they're not brand new and shiny and things like that. Like, for example, the successes you mentioned earlier about what success looked like for you when you were first starting out. For me, that's something that I'm definitely going to take away, because I think you sort of just take that for granted. So I guess, with that said, in terms of risk management today, if there's one thing that you could change about it, or practices or things which sort of maybe grind your gears a little bit, what would that one thing be? And then second part of the question, in terms of the future of risk management, how do you see that evolving from where it was when you started to now, and maybe say, let's say, in the next 10 years or so?
So I think the thing that's kind of I suppose grinding my gears, I think you said.
Grind my gears, yeah. Sorry, it's a Family Guy reference.
That's how I roll. but I think for me, it's like maybe leaders not taking other people's careers and developing people as they should. That really, like, I always think, like, that's an extension of you, and you will always be there with them. Doesn't matter whether you're a good influence or a bad, you'll always have that mark on them. And I just don't hear it enough, like, people being proud of, I had this person as an analyst and they were so good at this, and I taught them this, or, like, I'm not saying it's not, there is people that do it, right? But in general, like, I never ever hear of, like, anything in LinkedIn about, like, the things that we teach graduates, what's the key things, like, it's always negative stuff. There's never a lot of positive stuff, and there's so much good being done through risk management. So that really sometimes grinds my gears, in terms of like, let's look at the positives, and let's try and get the best people to come into this profession. And you can only do that by offering the best. Like, people don't go to things that they kind of go, oh, they don't look that confident, they don't really know what they're doing, they're always, like, negative, and do they really know what their identity is? I think it's about more pushing that. That's what grinds my gears. I think the future, so what the future of risk management looks like to me, I think we're going to get very good at reading data. I think we'll get very good at influencing. I think that'll be the key. If we can't persuade and influence, because I think everyone's going to come up a level. So like back in the day when I was an analyst and I was just like churning numbers and going to risk workshops and being dead happy putting post-its and all that, I just don't think, like, with the technology we've got, and we should embrace technology, don't get me wrong, like my teams have technology, but I think the need for that is going to be so quick that's going to go. So therefore, what's going to be substituted is you'll get all this information, and the future will look like, how do you use that to help people make decisions, but being accountable for what you give them and maybe helping them get over the line. So I think we'll be rolling our sleeves up more and being very much more active in the role. Like when it's like the difference between being in delivering one big project and you're in the project site office and you're in it with a team, and then you're in a TPMO and you've got 3,000 projects and it's just like kind of sprinkling the dust and checking this. I think we're going to see data from a big perspective, but helping at the kind of like removing the blockers and trying to help people just understand what's going on, because there is just so much data and there is so much complexities and like, give me efficiencies, where's the optimization, lean management, transform at the same time, and people are very overwhelmed and they just need someone to kind of, they will need an advisor to steady that ship and go, we know that there's hundreds you could be looking at, but we just need to focus on 10, right? And AI is going to give you hundreds, but you're going to have to be able to see the wood from the trees. And I think that's what the role's going to become. Yeah. How do you pick the good things and how do you move forward? And I think, like, I read this thing the other day and it said, if you don't know history, it's as if you were born yesterday. And if you were born yesterday, then any leader can tell you anything.
Love that. Nice. Another little sound bite.
Yeah. So it's like, so you're going to get caught out.
Yeah.
So I think the future risk managers are going to have to know their stuff in order to provide advice.
I think it's a bright future.
My opinion. It's a great future. I think it looks brilliant. I mean, I'm not at the end of my career, right? But I would be very, very excited to be at the start of my career here, because, like, what I think is going to happen is there's going to be people that naturally may have struggled to climb very quickly that are going to get seen very quickly in an organisation, because the role, if played right, will just get to the top very, very quickly. Like, I was quite lucky with the positions. I got seen very quickly early on in my career, but I think everyone might have that possibility if the profession plays their cards right in terms of just making things more balanced.
Yeah. Love that.
Nice. Cool. And then just keeping with riskologist tradition, what piece of advice would you give your younger self if you knew at the start of your career?
I'm like, I should have went back and tried to read my last one, right? Because now someone's gonna, now whoever said they listen to it 4 times or something like that, right? They're gonna go, she's telling lies. She did not say that. But I think, you grow, don't you? So I think if I had to talk to my younger self, I would say listening is the art, but it's also the most hardest thing to ever do. And take time and practice it as soon as you can, because it will just give you a lot of credibility, and it will help in ways you don't even know. So I think I would do that. Be confident in what you are and what skills you have, and that will project onto others and give you the kind of floor to grow as you want to. I think that would
love that. I think active listening is something that I'm I really try and work on. And as you mentioned before about mentors and stuff, Paul Sutcliffe, my mentor here, he's probably one of the best listeners I've ever met. So yeah, I completely agree. It's such an underrated skill, being able to listen and actually listen and not just think, what am I going to respond to the first bit?
Yeah. So, and I think like one of the things I've always said to my children is 2 years in one mouth, more listening, less talking.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, and also it's a really difficult thing when you're passionate. It's a really hard balance because you want to help, but listening is you'll find a lot of what you're looking for if you can listen.
Yeah. Even on these podcasts, you might say something like early on in the point, and then I was no, just let you finish, and then I can say my bit.
I know,
fantastic, Donna. Well, if anybody wants to get hold of you regarding any of the things we've touched on today, is LinkedIn the best POC?
Yes. Yeah. Just send me something LinkedIn, and I'll get back to you.
Cool. Well, we'll pop a link to Donna's.
And I don't want any hate mail.
Keep it clean.
No hate mail. Yeah.
Keep it clean. We'll pop a link to Donna's LinkedIn profile in the comments. But Donna, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure and so much fun. Thanks so much for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, guys. I know that you've worked really hard on it, and I really appreciate it. So,
pleasure is all ours.
Someone will listen. Yeah.
Let's see. Legend.
Okay,
Cheers,
I'll
Donna.
speak to you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
And that's it for this week. If you enjoyed this episode of Riskologists, be sure to follow, optimise and Riskologists on all of our social media channels, where you can subscribe to the podcast and be notified of every episode so you don't miss a thing.
Please like, share and leave reviews to help support us and increase our reach within the wider Risk community.
And join us next time, where we'll be chatting with another leading figure in the world of risk.
Until then, thanks for listening and take it easy.